In his 1988 book, Only the Lover Sings, the philosopher Josef Pieper asked a simple yet profound question. What is the value of art in a world dominated by work? Why do we make music, carve sculptures, or paint pictures? What does art contribute to our lives? Pieper's answer is ultimately a mixture of Platonism and Christianity. He argues that art reveals a deeper reality that allows us to celebrate life and overcome any feelings of nihilism. He writes, "The answer contained in our Western philosophical tradition could be summed up in this way. Whenever in reflective and receptive contemplation we touch even remotely the core of all things, the hidden ultimate reason of the living universe, the divine foundation of all that is, the purest form of all archetypes, whenever and wherever we thus behold the very essence of reality, there is an activity that is meaningful in itself taking place." Art allows us to slow down, contemplate deeper realities, and become more fully human. Over the course of several short essays, Pieper explains how art expresses a love for existence and meaning, which is why, as the book's title, quoting Augustine, suggests, only the lover sings. In a world of materialism and instrumental thinking, it is art that awakens us to forgotten truths. Art is a celebration of God's creation and divine purpose. In the first essay, Pieper discusses how we struggle to distinguish between work, spare time, and leisure. It's easy to see spare time and leisure as just a break from work, giving us time to recover so we can work again. But Pieper, following Aristotle, wants to flip this around. Instead, we work so we can have leisure. The word holiday, holy day, reminds us that our leisure time should be like a feast day. This is about more than just taking it easy, playing games, and entertaining ourselves. It wouldn't make sense to work just to allow us to play. Instead, leisure sets us free to do something more profound. Pieper here points out that in the university system, there has long been a distinction between the servile arts and the liberal arts. Liberal means free, free from merely practical or instrumental approaches. Pieper warns against communism, which, by making work meaningful in itself, makes workers entirely servile. By contrast, leisure gives us the breathing space to slow down and do something that is entirely meaningful in itself, to contemplate the harmony of the world, to understand the Platonic forms, to be silent and in awe, and to do all of this especially through art. In our day and age, many have forgotten how to do this. We need to learn to see again. Rather than be distracted by all the visual noise of screens, ads, and clutter, it's good to appreciate the beauty of the world, whether it's the stars at night or a beautiful phrase. Pieper gives the example of a line from Tolstoy. The girl's eyes were gleaming like wet currants. It takes a special intensity of observation to come up with such a comparison. Another example Pieper provides is how, traveling by boat from New York back to Europe, he overheard someone say that the night before there was nothing to be seen. But, had the person been observant, they would have had much to treasure, including, quote, those magnificent fluorescent sea creatures whirled up to the surface by the hundreds in our ship's bow wake. Pieper's message is even more relevant in our time, when so many of us are addicted to social media. Do we set aside time to contemplate a flower, or enjoy the expression on a child's face? One kind of art that especially brings us closer to the fundamentals of human existence is music. Music is about more than just the individual notes. In the same way, a painting expresses something more than the picture it represents. Pieper gives the example of Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. Each of the movements has a different description. Right now you're listening to the awakening of cheerful feelings on arrival in the countryside. But the words don't capture everything that music does. The complete experience is more intimate. Music, as Schopenhauer said, does not speak of things but tells of weal and woe. Music touches us emotionally. As humans, we are pilgrims always traveling toward a goal, namely the achievement of goodness and happiness. In this process of becoming, we apply our will as we strive to reach the impossible destination. Music captures this journey. It captures the joys and the sorrows of existence, the hidden beauty of existence, the pregnant silences, the impossibility of ever truly capturing those feelings that make us want to sing. Pieper therefore quotes Augustine when he talks about our desire for the good. We cannot say, and yet cannot be silent either. What are we to do, employing neither speech nor silence? We ought to rejoice, jubilate, shout out your heart's delight in wordless jubilation. And because music expresses a human being's quest for self-realization, for understanding the world, it is also an expression of love. We become better, more ethical beings as we love the universe and contemplate it in sound and silence. Only the lover sings. A society therefore has to be careful that art is nurtured and promoted, and that art helps to create a more harmonious living together. For there are also art forms that are just entertainment. Pieper's thinking of music that contains little more than a rhythmic beat, frivolous lyrics, a crass message, and so on. Such music expresses a kind of nihilism, in that it plays on our basest instincts. It's not surprising that in Dante's Inferno, hell is a noisy place, a pandemonium. Music requires an element of silence, a listening silence, and this wordless jubilation is what we hear in such great composers as Johann Sebastian Bach. Now, art not only helps us to see better and to listen better, but it also helps us to remember better. Or to be more specific, art reminds us to remember, a distinction that is clearer in English than in German. This is not just a matter of thinking more clearly. Pieper points to different stories the Greeks used to tell about the 9 muses, those spirits that inspire artists. The poet Sappho noted that the muses inherited from their mother the gift of remembrance. But what is it they remind us of? The poet Pindar gives us one answer. He tells the story of how after Zeus turned the chaos of the universe into a more harmonious whole, there was still something missing, a voice that could praise this creation. That's why the muses were created, quote, to sing the praises of all creation. Art reminds us of the sacred reality, of the archetypes and forms, of the meaning of existence. And therefore the artist has much in common with the Christian priest, who, in Pieper's words, is called above all to keep alive the remembrance of a face that our intuition just barely perceives behind all immediate and tangible reality. The face of the God-man, bearing the marks of a shameful execution. That face, of course, is Christ's. But if art is to remind us to remember, it must not be merely technical or relativistic or shallow or narcissistic. The great artist is someone who seeks nothing for himself, who rather keeps the recesses of his soul in silence and simplicity, receptive to the breath of creative inspiration, which then flows by way of his own remembrance, unadulterated, into the unfolding form of his work. We must therefore overcome the perception, so common in our time, that art is irrelevant in our day-to-day lives. What role does art have to play in the busy marketplace of life? To quote a line from the poet Hölderlin, what good are poets in barren times? But this perception only occurs when we stop loving existence, when we stop celebrating. For Pieper, this happens with the existentialism of Sartre, which finds no meaning in the universe. But art provides us with a glimpse of something greater, of an original bliss and a regenerated future, both of which are captured in the word paradise. And as we strive for perfection, we need to avoid both the extremes of a barren realism and an absurd level of abstraction. When, with the help of art, we pursue the contemplative life, we avoid the worst of modern art and pursue what is truly inspiring and beautiful. As the philosopher Anaxagoras said in response to the question, "Why are you here on earth?" to behold. This can be translated as to contemplate. Our ultimate desire is to contemplate what we cannot see, what is divine, and as we pursue this, we are in the end taken, quote, beyond the confines of this world. This is what it means that only the lover sings.